Welcome to episode 89 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on November 18th, 2022. Today I have a chat to share with you with Jana of the Purl Together podcast. I get asked a lot these days about being a knitting podcaster, and so I thought I'd give Jana a call and we could talk through some of the issues associated with doing what we do. But first, thank you to my patrons, especially big thanks to Judy, who just came on as a patron. One of the benefits that patrons at the $5 and up levels receive is access to 3 monthly online knitting sessions. If you are someone who comes on Wednesday nights, keep watch on the Patreon feed. I've just been asked to help with the youth group at church, and Wednesday evenings are when the midweek activities happen. We will carry on as planned through December, but I'll have to shift to a different night in the new year. Keep an eye out, as I said, at patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow for those 2023 dates to come out in the next few weeks. A huge thank you to Knit New Haven and Morehouse Farm for supporting the show as well. Remember that both companies offer online ordering. Please support the folks who support the show. If you'll be shopping for a knitter or spinner this holiday season, find the links to my sponsors in the show notes. We do have 2 to 3 spots left on the second Contemporary Crafts Week tour of the Makkin Our Way Through Shetland tours for 2023. That is the week where we will be visiting the non-knitting makers, though I will say that there is a knitting theme to the whole week. If you would like to join us for that week, or if you would like to get on the waiting list for any of the other tours, and that is a good idea to do if you would like to travel with us this coming year, because people do have to back out from time to time, please send an email to my travel partner Jolene at info@islandvista.co.uk and tell her if you are interested in either joining us on Contemporary Crafts or if you would like to be waitlisted for any of the other tours. Now, as I said before, I have been getting more and more questions lately related to being a knitting podcaster. People want to know what it's like, how to start one, how much they can expect to make doing it, if really they should bother starting one at all. So I called up one of my favorite podcasting colleagues to talk these things over, because Jana's a video podcaster while I do audio, and Jana focuses a lot on tutorials while I focus mainly on spotlighting heritage techniques and people in the knitting world. And we do overlap and we like to work together, but I thought it would be good to have our different methods and focuses represented in the conversation. So I thought she could help me cover more bases than just me talking about my experiences alone. So with that, I'll take us into the conversation with Jana, and I'll be back at the end to wrap things up. Jana, I want to thank you for agreeing to have this conversation with me, because I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. I don't know how to talk about it without it devolving into like whining about what we do. I don't want it to come off that way. So what happened was I was out to lunch with a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and she is looking for work. And she made the comment that someone told her that she should look into becoming a YouTube craft person and like doing kids crafts and stuff on YouTube. And she was sort of asking my advice about the feasibility of that. And I said, well, not if you want to support yourself. I was like, I could understand the impulse in wanting to do that. And I got down to brass tacks with her and was like, this is how much I make in a month and where it all goes and what I have to do to get that. And she quickly decided it was not for her and the daughter she's trying to support. So I find that a lot of people have misconceptions about what it is we do and what we're trying to do and why we do it and what we get from it and all of those things. And so I thought, who could I have a conversation with about this? And I figured Jana and we can get pretty brass tacks with each other sometimes.
Yes. You know? Well, and I remember very early on in our friendship, we talked about some nitty gritty regarding this kind of, where your podcast was fairly young then. Mm-hmm. I think you were only on your 2nd season. And, you know, my channel was much younger then. And we've always been very candid about the business side of what we're doing.
I think it's also a good thing that we have each other, because we're sort of we're doing different things in the same genre,
Yes. Yes.
My goal is to try and shine a light on people doing fantastic things. And that's what I do. And I know you do that too, by having people on your YouTube, but your YouTube, I'm audio. You do a lot of tutorials. I avoid that like the plague. I would say my main focus more is on like heritage crafts and trying to educate and spotlight that. And you're more focused on like techniques and people within the industry who are like producing yarns and things like that. And we have overlap. We definitely have overlap.
Yeah. And that's why it's fun. Sure.
Yeah. But I think that makes it easier for us to have conversations like this, because it's not like we're not infringing on each other's territory or anything. You know?
No. And I'll tell you this, I've had a couple of similar conversations with people that maybe I would be conceived to be in direct competition with. But I think, let's preface this whole thing by saying the internet and YouTube is a very massive place. I really, really think there's room for everyone. And we can, rather than competing, we can be companionable and we can support each other. And I think that, there's room for everybody for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was talking to someone else the other day. He was sort of curious about podcasts and this stuff that I do. And I was like, well, I just went out and started talking about stuff, and then my people found me. Everybody who does this, we have different personalities. We have different areas of interest. Find the people you like and who are doing things you're interested in. And
in the Venn diagram of social circles of knitting, we have some overlap in our circles, but we also don't, you know a whole bunch of people that I have never met, and it's fantastic.
Anyway, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I want to start by asking you, like, why you did this, like, why? Because it's not like there was someone who hires us to do these things. So at some point, people who do what we do just decide to do it. And so what was it that made you decide to do this?
I wanted to stay home and knit and watch Netflix.
Yeah.
And then figure out how I could make that into a business. Truthfully, that's where it started, was how could I take what I like to do, what I'm passionate about, what I really enjoy, how can I make that an income producing activity? I had no preconceived ideas of what that might look like. Here's one thing I want to preface all of this by saying is I had a conversation with somebody, just Facebook Messenger, and I know this person from an entirely different set of circumstances. And she's like, well, how's the YouTube thing going? Like, do you make a lot of money on social media and YouTube? And I'm like, no. I said, because she's not in it. Like, she doesn't have she doesn't have that kind of, she's not trying to be a social media influencer. She's just a person I know from a different set of circumstances. But she has this perception that, if you have over 10,000 followers on YouTube, then, you must be making money from YouTube. People don't get how it works. What I wanted to do was to be able to share what I love and what I'm passionate about with other people. And I've been told that I'm a decent teacher. And I thought, well, that's fun. It's fun to teach other people to knit. It's fun to do this. So I live in the middle of nowhere. How could I do that? I don't have any interest in traveling on a weekly basis. It would take a long time for me to get anywhere with any kind of population on a regular and weekly basis. So social media and the internet and YouTube was a way for me to create my own knitting group, basically. And I didn't start with the YouTube channel. I started with a Facebook group.
Oh, I didn't realize it started with the Facebook group.
If I recall, it kind of started with the Facebook group, and I can't even remember. I think I just started being like, here, I know you knit, and I invited people to join me. And then all of a sudden it showed up on the Facebook recommendation things. So then there was like, I don't know, there's like 20 people. Then there was like 50 people. And then there was like, okay, then how are we going to have a knit along? And then I decided to start the channel and use that for that purpose. And then that kind of snowballed. And I thought, well, I could just be more serious about this and put out weekly videos or whatever, however often. Then I'm like, well, I kind of need a name for it. One thing led to another.
That's interesting how it grew organically from your interests into an actual thing. Yeah, I jumped into it anyone who's been listening since the very beginning knows, and I do apologize for getting you here under false pretenses, but I started as an accountability component for doing the Master Hand Knitter program, which I think by episode 3, I was like, oh, do I really want to do this? And I kept sort of making myself do it because the podcast was the accountability component of that. Right. And just sort of decided it wasn't really necessarily for me at this time in my life. And so I feel bad because I have people who discover the podcast and start listening, and they're like, start from the beginning and send me emails. Oh, I'm so glad I found you. I'm doing the Master Knitter program. This is going to be great. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
But that's not to say you won't do that at some point, but it is about timing. And you couldn't have foreseen like which direction the podcast would take you. And because now it's been the gateway for you for all these other kinds of things, like promoting heritage crafts and visiting crafts in Shetland and spending time with fantastic people there. And, you know, really kind of working this whole endeavor into what you love to do.
I guess that's one of the benefits and one of the drawbacks of the fact that this is just something you can decide to do, because there's no one who hired you for a specific purpose. So the purpose can sort of make itself known over time. You know, like you and your teaching, you say, you know, people say you're a decent teacher or whatever. That's not true. People rave about how wonderful your videos, your instructional videos and things are. I hear about it all the time.
Thank you.
Don't be shy about it. You deserve this. Take it. Take the compliments. I have had so many people comment that I learned to knit socks, or I'm doing socks now. And how did you learn? Oh, there's this lady on YouTube who does a whole series of tutorials, and it's always you, Jana. They found your sock knitting tutorial and follow that, and then they continue following you from there because
that's what's been so much fun is people saying, well, I didn't think I could do it. And I'm like, well, of course you can do it. You just need to take it step by step, pun intended. And that you can, and it really is empowering because it's that way for lots of things. You don't think you can, but then all of a sudden you realize it's literally one stitch at a time, and it will come together. You know, but it's been really the rewarding part of it. You don't make money from YouTube necessarily. I mean, a little bit, but like not enough to pay your groceries quite yet. Maybe we eat too much, but
you live on a farm and raise so much of your own food. So the fact that it's not covering your groceries should tell people how much you can expect to make off of YouTube.
Right. And one time I tried to sort of figure it out, and I don't mind getting to the nitty gritty of this. Now, this is very, very loose because it also depends a great deal upon your genre, your audience, whether you choose to have super chat or memberships on YouTube. There's always all these little things. Your YouTube revenue, people don't understand this either, comes from the ads. So if you know, the little ad in the beginning where it says you can skip the ad in 5 seconds. I mean, that's how YouTubers get paid, is whether people watch more than the 5 seconds or whether they click on something from the advertisement or whatever. I, as a YouTuber, do not control what that ad is. Google tries to make it relevant to you based on your history and your cookies and all these other algorithm things that I don't understand. All those little ads, that maybe adds up to like $60 to $75 per 10,000 subscribers. Because even though I have not quite 40,000 subscribers, it's not like all those people are not watching every minute of every video of everything I post, right? It's only a small percentage, not to be a bummer. But the YouTube is simply a window to be able to find like-minded people that like want to come to your events or want to come to your classes or want to, you know, be on your emailing list or want to join your Facebook group or want to do other things with you. I mean, that's how you find your people, right?
Yeah. And then that's ultimately where the bulk of our income comes from, are these secondary things that we're doing. So
yes, absolutely.
Because like as an audio podcaster, I don't get anything from downloads. I don't get anything from downloads or listens at all. That's why I have to have like affiliate links. So I have a mid-reel commercial moment where I talk about a few products, and I only talk about things that I have actually bought and tried and used myself. And I get offers all the time. Do you want to do this? And I say, okay, well, send me one. Or if it's something I think I'll actually use, I might just go ahead and buy it and do it, you know. But there's been times when I've
well, a lot of the times when I say send me one, they say, okay, thanks, bye. And then there's other times when I buy something or they'll send me something and I'll just say, no, this isn't really something I'll use. So there's that. So if people go to my website or go to the show notes and click through and actually purchase something, then I get a small percentage from that. That wasn't paying the bills though. That was not paying the cost of the podcast, because there's people think you just like make a recording and put it online, but there's a hosting service you have to pay for. I've had to buy software for it. For the website has costs associated with it.
Equipment.
So, yeah, the equipment. And I did have equipment already. My family had been doing a podcast for a while we were still in the Philippines, but that's totally off the internet now. That's gone. But I did have some equipment. It wasn't very good, so I had to upgrade. So that's another thing people don't realize is there's costs associated with doing it and getting started. But now it took me 3 years of podcasting to cover the costs of the podcast.
Right. And I have affiliate links too. I mean, like if you go to the video description and click through to like an Amazon link or something, then there's a tiny commission. Or if I'm working with a partnership with a local yarn shop for yarn and supplies for a knit along we're going to do or whatever. But all of those it takes a lot of that kind of thing to add up to any measurable income.
We did a knit along just like to give people an idea of that. I did a knit along with Erin of Morehouse Farm. Right. And in order to do the knit along, people had to buy a book with the pattern in it. And we used my affiliate link for that. And we had dozens of people who bought the book, dozens of people. And I made $8. So it's really, just to give you a sense of how much those affiliate links pay, but they do add up, they can add up on like a big event or.
And it all helps. I mean, don't think that it doesn't, because it all definitely helps. But the point here is that we do it because we enjoy it and we love it. And,
Yeah, exactly. But there is that aspect of it too, where it was stressful for my husband at certain points because I was putting in so much time.
Yes.
And there was so little coming in, and it was going out, like money was going out in order for me to do this. Right. And I saw it as a hobby. This is my hobby to start with, and we spend money on our hobbies. And so that's okay. And it wasn't breaking the bank to do it. We could afford to do it. But at certain points, it's like, why are you doing this again? Why are you putting all this time into it?
Yeah.
And you're not, there's that aspect of it that there is costs associated with doing.
Sure. I think for me, YouTube isn't the moneymaker people think it is. Where the reasonable or where the acceptable income is, or where you might break even is like, teaching classes and hosting events and one, because it's fun, and two, because that connects you with your knitting community and the people that are like-minded in your craft and promoting that heritage of a skill. And for the most part, knitters are fantastic people, and it's fun to meet up in person.
So I do the Makkin Our Way Through Shetland tours, and you have your events that you do in person and online for like retreats where people can come and you have a theme for the days that you're together. I think it's great that the way that we break even / get into the black is the funnest part, because that's when we get to hang out with people and have that time together. So it's like at this point, it's like, well, why am I doing the podcast? So that I can have more people come to Shetland with me and we can hang out together.
Yeah. Well, why am I doing another knit along? So I can have more people interested in my channel and what I'm doing, so I can meet up with them and hang out together.
Exactly.
I mean, really, that's the end goal, is like, we just want to hang out with other knitters. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the motivation.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. See, so our purpose, we started one way with certain motivation, and now we're doing our different things with different motivation, basically just to hang out. We like hanging out with you guys.
we just want to hang out and knit. That's all. That's it.
That's right. We're back to Jana's like, I want to stay home and knit and watch Netflix.
And now I want someone else to do it with me. That's the point.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. There is a definite learning curve. I mean, I have a new video editing software that I've had for a while that I just am a little intimidated by, and I haven't learned it yet. So I keep plugging along with the old thing I've been using, and, but it's not enough of a pain point yet, I guess, to make me learn the new one. So,
right. Yeah.
but you're right. There's lighting and sound, and then there's social media posting and all and as we've discovered, I am not good at keeping up with Instagram. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of technical aspects to what we do that you have to be up to date on. So, and it's not impossible. Like starting a podcast, it's not impossible. There's a lot of tutorials out there and how-tos and things, but it's more than just recording audio and putting it online. Like there's the editing, there's the hosting service and how that works, and getting it connected to Apple Podcasts and registering for the different distribution services and things like that. So it's, like I said, it's not impossible. It's Googleable information, but it's
Googleable,
searchable,
attainable information.
Attainable information.
That's so funny.
But at the same time, it does become, well, I want to do this because I enjoy knitting. You better also enjoy learning about technology and keeping up to date with software changes and algorithm changes in social media and things like that too. Like that's part of what this is all of this back end stuff. And I think that's the stuff that people burn out on the most.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the knitting. It's not understanding the amount of work that's happening on the back end.
Right.
Having to do it, having to like deciding, okay, I'm going to do 10 episodes every other week or every week, or I'm going to do a knit along and have it be 11 or 12 videos, and having to get that done to follow through on your promises and like all of the work behind it.
And that's really hard because like in my case, if I say, okay, we're going to do a knit along, it's going to be 6 or 8 weeks or whatever, there does take a little bit of planning, and I'm not the best at that, but people need to get supplies. People need to budget for that, maybe depending on how big of a project it is. And I have to be mindful of that. But also I can't necessarily hack the algorithm, and that's just stressful for me. And I can't. So I've just decided I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and it's going to grow organically, and I'm going to just keep being me and being as authentic as I can. And it'll be what it is. That's probably why it's taken me like 4 years to get the number of following subscribers that I have, which in the world of YouTube, when there's people out there that are also knitters that have, 500,000 subscribers, like I'm not even 10% of that yet. But I will tell you, my pearls are fantastic, and it's great.
I love that.
Yes. I mean, we've built this really cool community in the Ravelry and more so the Facebook group, and knitters are awesome people. And of course, with any group, you have, a couple of challenging people maybe in there, but really overall, they're lovely. But you're right. They don't understand what goes into producing a video, and the knitting and the editing and all the things. Of course, when we're talking about the grind of this, when we're just, you and I are about to start the daily.
Our daily December video blogging that we do together. Yeah.
It's super fun though.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I'm not going to lie. I love it because I hate doing video. I hate doing the back end of video production and you don't mind it. And so this is a way for me to do video for a month and not have to do the back end.
Well, and it is fun. It gives me content for a month. It's super fun to chat every morning and unwrap our little presents together, and hopefully it directs people to your podcast and to my channel. And we both benefit from that traffic intensively for a month. And it's a fun way to spend the holiday too.
So when you put out a video, Jana, like say you were going to put out a 10-minute video, how much time goes into filming and editing and getting it up and advertised?
Oh my word. You would think I would have kept track of that at some point during the last 4 or 5 years. But every video is different because it depends on the content. It depends on whether it's a podcast like you and I do together. Those are actually pretty easy unless someone is like, I don't know, this hardly ever happens, but unless it's heavily needing to be edited because someone has like a weird speech thing or something happens in the background or I say something stupid, usually it's me. Podcasts are not that difficult because they tend to kind of flow. If it's a technical, like technique of the week tutorial kind of thing, Sometimes that's more difficult because I have to knit the thing to the point that I want to teach it, unless I'm teaching a cast on or something. And then I have to film it. Then I have to knit to the next section. For example, when I was doing the Nora's Vintage Afghan, and we did the 1 block a month for 20 months. So I would start out the beginning of the block, and each block was like, 180 yards or something. So that's not just one evening necessarily. Right. So, you got to show the cast on and then the techniques, and then you actually have to knit the thing. And then maybe there's some other technique you're going to show in the middle, and then knit some more, and then show how you're going to end it. So all of the knitting of it with some little interspersed filming, all of the creating of that content, the tutorial part. And then, after I've actually done the work and done the knitting, then there's the photography, then there's the building of the graphics, like for Instagram, the YouTube thumbnail. That takes time, the actual editing of the video. And then depending on the YouTube gods, there's the uploading, and how long does that take? So a 10-minute video probably takes minimum, I'm going to say 4 or 5 hours. Longer than one would think. Maybe that's because I'm not that good at it.
So with my episodes, if I'm just doing an episode on my own,
okay, yeah,
I have to do the research, whatever it is I'm going to be talking about. That can vary depending on whether I'm just talking about something I'm knitting or reviewing a product or a book. Those go really quick. But if I'm doing one of my deep dives, like when I'm talking about cotton and how to knit with cotton and take care of cotton, things to consider with cotton, that takes a lot more research and time ahead of time. Even sometimes the interviews I do with people, you've got to really look into their background and figure out how to draw out the most interesting things about what they're doing. But then if it's just a me podcast, I script those suckers. Those are completely scripted. I write it out. I think
that's hilarious. You told me that once, that you write out everything first. And then you
saves me so much time though in the editing. So if I don't script what I'm going to say in the podcast, then I am busy. I second guess myself. I false start. Whatever. So the podcasts with just me are totally scripted ahead of time. And that way also, if I'm doing an informative podcast, like the deep dives, I make sure I have all the information in that I want to get in,
Right. That makes sense. Sure.
And then the editing process generally takes twice as long as the episode ends up being. So an hour-long podcast will take 2 hours to edit, because you're listening and then you're going back and cutting out something and listening again to make sure it's right.
Agreed.
So
for editing time, I think that's totally true. Yeah.
Yeah. And then once I'm to that point, the uploading and social media posts and things regarding it, I've got that down to about an hour. That takes me about an hour now to do all of them. I've got a system now that goes pretty quick. Yeah. So I would say an episode, like a normal average episode coming in between half hour and an hour, probably minimum takes about 8 hours. And if it was like a deep dive one, probably 3 times that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because for me, it depends on, again, the research. You brought that up. I forgot about that. The research, whatever I'm knitting to the next section that I need to film. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How do you decide what you're going to talk about next? Like what you're going to bring to your channel next?
See, I wish I was a good planner like you are. I mean, you've told me about I'm going to plan the whole year. And I'm like, really?
I don't always I never stick to it religiously,
I know.
but I like having a general outline.
And when I podcast, or when I make my videos, I don't script it. I will often have just a little note card or a scratch piece of paper with highlights or a little outline, but I don't literally write out everything I'm going to say. I might just make a little bullet list so that I don't forget a topic, but that would make me nuts. I don't think I could do that. I'm more of a wing it kind of person.
That's fine too. I'm fine in a way. I can do a wing it situation when I'm doing an interview. I'll come in with a list of questions, but deviate from them all the time.
Sure. Sure.
It's fine. Yeah. And a conversation like this obviously is a conversation, but when it's just me conveying information, it's just so much better to have it scripted.
To answer your question though, how I decide, a lot of it has to do with, okay, I'll just do a little quick shameless plug. My patrons get to help decide what we do next. So if you go to patreon.com/Purl Together, that's where you find my patron page. And Anne has one too. patreon.com/I thought I knew how. We are each other's patrons because we support each other. Isn't that nice? I mean, it's maybe cheesy, but it's nice. But
I love it.
One of the perks, I know, me too. One of the perks that my patrons have though is we do patron knit night, and you do that too. And then sometimes I'll be like, well, what do you guys want to do next? And so we'll bounce around, brainstorm ideas. And that helps me know, because those patrons I feel like are representative, a pretty good cross section of the people that listen or that watch the videos or that are members of the Facebook group. And so they give me ideas of what they want to learn next, or if it's a technique they want to learn, or if it's something we've done before that they thought was awesome and they want to knit it again, which doesn't really happen too much unless it's different techniques for socks, because socks are socks. That's true. But there's lots of ways to make a sock. Usually the ideas come from the group, or honestly, it might just be something I am selfishly going to knit in that I'm interested in. And I'm just going to share it, and people can get on board if they want or not. But usually it's the patrons that help me come up with what's the next thing? What's the next knit along going to be? What's the next topic?
I don't necessarily use them that way to come up with what I'm going to do next. But one thing I find is I just can't keep track of everything going on in the knitting world.
Right.
It's impossible. And people often will come to me and ask, like, I love your podcast. What other one should I listen to? And I answer, I don't listen to any other knitting podcasts. I'm so sorry, but I don't have time.
It's hard. It's hard.
When you're creating content, it's hard to follow other people's content. I love Jana, and I watch very few of Jana's videos because I just don't have time.
Yeah.
And so I find that my patrons are very helpful as far as pointing me to things that are going on in the knitting community. And so I figure if they're talking about it, that's a good thing to pursue. So I don't have to be involved with everything going on in the knitting world.
Right. Because at our patron knit alongs, people talk about, oh, did you see this new pattern? Or, oh, did you see that? And, they share links, and that's been really fun.
Yeah. So that's very valuable help that I get from my patrons. But for the most part, what I think I do is, well, sometimes I'm approached by people. I mean, let's just be blunt. Sometimes I'm approached by people, they want me to review a product or yarn. Like if I'm approached by someone who wants me to do a yarn review, usually how that works is they'll say, hey, we'll send you this much yarn, or pick a project and we'll send the yarn for it, and then talk about it. And I always warn them, I will be honest about my experience with your product.
Right.
And there's only been one time when I've gotten yarn where I contacted them and was like, are you sure you want me to review this? Because I did not, and I told them the issues I had, and they were like, nope, that's great. Just thank you. Just keep it, And I was like, okay. But it's rare that there's negative, like fully negative things like that. So that's one way, if I'm approached by someone saying, can you review something, or can you try something to talk about it? And I will, because especially if it's a smaller maker, because that's one of the things I really like to do is shine a light on the people who are doing good work, really good work.
Yes, absolutely.
And haven't been found yet. Those are the people I really like to spotlight.
I agree. Same. I will do a review, particularly if it's like an indie dyer or a smaller, like you're saying, a smaller company. I've really only been approached twice, like more like a corporate sponsorship kind of situation. And I really kind of shy away from that because I want to knit what I want to knit, and I want to knit with whatever yarn I want. I don't really want to have my hands tied in that way with like a large corporate sponsorship. But, absolutely, I love to help promote indie dyers and smaller makers for sure. But, doing a single product review for like one skein of yarn or something, that's not the same thing as like a corporate sponsorship from like a massive nationwide company. That's not the same thing.
Yeah. That's one way I come up with content for the show, or decide what I'm going to talk about. But then the other thing is like, we travel a lot, right? So I try and find wool related things going on when we travel. So that's a big way of where I find it. And then like with my deep dives that I've been doing over this last season, I just thought it was good. It's good for people to understand how yarn works and how the different fibers work. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do like 6 episodes on different fibers and how to take care of them. That's like a good framework. I can do that like every 3rd episode, every 2nd episode, and like pace myself. Like, okay, if I do it every 3rd episode, that's 6 weeks where I can be researching in between times and like really come
And do you hold to that schedule? Like, does it work out that way?
With my research-based ones, I do. Good. Like start looking it up and reading it and stuff, weeks in advance. Some of the ones where it's me talking about like what's going on and stuff, those can sometimes be like, oh no, it's Tuesday. The episode comes out on Monday. What am I going to talk about? But I do have a system in place to try and make sure that I'm not doing things last minute. So I will sit down the Wednesday before an episode is due and I will write the episode then. And that's my goal, is to have that part written the Wednesday before an episode is due. And then Thursday I record it. And oftentimes I'll edit it that day too. But sometimes that goes on to Friday and I'll, so I have my progression where, write it, record it, edit it, do the social media post for it. And then on Monday night, it goes live at 9:00 my time and everything is already scheduled to go out. So, except if you're my patron. If you're a patron, you get the audio as soon as I'm done with it. So sometimes you'll get it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, anyway. But on Monday night at 9:00, I have to do like 10 minutes of work on social media because there's some places that won't allow you to schedule posts ahead of time. So I get on it.
It's interesting to me talking about, briefly we mentioned algorithms. So how did you decide that Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern was the time?
So the reason why I did that has nothing to do with social media. It has to do with my hosting service.
Oh.
I had been releasing things on Mondays just because I figured the weekend, there's always some time on the weekend where I can finish something up, Right. So Monday was always like the safest day for me to release something. And I just learned that over time. So I use Libsyn as my hosting service. And I realized that they give me charts as far as like how many downloads happened every day, every week, every month.
Okay.
And so I realized for some reason their day for their tracking starts at 9:00 my time. And so if I release it at 7:00, then it sort of skews the download numbers.
Right.
So I have a little bit on this day and then a little bit on the next day and whatever. And I was like, well, if I just release it at 9:00 on Monday, then that first day of downloads number is actually that number. Like that, it's not split between 2 days. It's the actual, that day's number of downloads is my download number.
So I wonder, are they in Europe?
I think they must be in Greenland is all I can figure. And like, because of the time zone, I was like, well, maybe they have a server bank there because then they can use natural weather for cooling, which happens like a lot of cold places have server banks. That's my only theory. I can't make sense of it.
Anyway, but that's how it ended up being 9.
But that's how it ended up, because that I figured the number of downloads that I get in the first 3 days are my number of subscribers. That's how I figure is my subscriber number, because as an audio podcaster, I have no way of knowing how many people are actually subscribed to the podcast. There's no metric for that. It's not like YouTube where you see your subscriber number. Like you have nearly 40,000. You're very close to 40,000 now. Right. I have no idea how many people are actually subscribed to.
Yeah, because you have Apple Podcasts, then there's Libsyn, then there's these other podcast services.
There's so many different ways that people can download a podcast. And so I can sell, and Libsyn will break it down for me and say, like, this episode had this many downloads from Apple, this many from Overcast, this many from Spotify, but they don't break that out day by day. They just give me like a running tally. And so I can look at I figured within the first 3 days, those are the people who have opened up their app and it started automatically downloading because they're subscribed. And so I take those 3 days and I add them up and I'm like, okay, I'm at this many thousands of subscribers. And I can tell that to people, who are like approaching me to do an ad or approaching me for a collaboration or things like that. So yeah, that's the reason. Like, it's no algorithm or like peak, whatever. It's just, that's just so I can get that number.
You mentioned something earlier about consistency is key. And so I'm sure you said that to your friend you were speaking with about, who was thinking about starting a video channel or whatever for the kids' crafts. And it's hard. Consistency is really hard. And this last month, I mean, talking about burnout as well, I did 2 retreats in 1 month. And now I'm like, okay, what do I talk about now? Until, you know what I mean? You have these lulls where you're like, what's next? What's this week's video? What have we not talked about? And you go through these things, or I do. So even though you love it, you still sometimes are you just need a break once in a while, because you do consistency. Consistency is key for growth on any social media platform.
That is one of the downsides of turning your favorite hobby into a job, right? Is that it's a job now, and there are moments of hobby and there's wonderful moments associated with the job. Like when we do get to hang out with people and interview people and go to have an excuse to go to Fiverr festivals and not feel guilty at all because it's work. But there's also, I did the tours, fantastic time on the tours this year, but I was gone for 7 weeks the second time. And I came back and I had planned on doing Rhinebeck was a week and a half later. And I'm like, that'll be fine. I can go to Rhinebeck. I had an episode scheduled to come out like a few days after that and like all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, because it was 3 weeks of tours, a week of vacation with my husband. And then I was there for Shetland Wool Week. And anyway, it all ended up to being 7 weeks away. And I got home and I wanted nothing to do with knitting. I didn't pick up my knitting for days. I didn't want to talk about it. I was supposed to go to Rhinebeck to help a friend. And I was just like, I just can't. I just cannot do it. And I bumped the episode a week and I apologize. I put it out on social media, like, sorry, it's just
hard.
It was like coming back from summer camp is how I explain it. Like you look forward to summer camp so much. It's, it's the best time of year. You go, you have a fantastic time. And then you come home and you have to just recover. I had to just recover for a little bit. And now I'm like back into it, but it was like, whew.
Well, yeah, you just need a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need a minute. That's okay. So we talked about your favorite part of overall, and that is getting to hang out with people and knit together and have fun stuff like that. And that's my favorite part too. Yeah. When you're going through the process of the actual creation of content and doing all this stuff until we get to hang out with people, what is your favorite part of what you're doing with the YouTube channel?
There's a couple of different things. It's really fun to see the comments when that the concept that you've taught or whatever technique video that it is has helped somebody get over the hump, and now they get it and they've had that light bulb moment. That's a lot of fun to read the comments. And like I said, most people are really, really cool. Every great once in a while, it's social media, right? There's always somebody that's snarky or crabby, but really that's a very, very, very small percentage. But my favorite part is the knitting and sharing that. It just is. I know that sounds cheesy, but my favorite part is not filming, but it's the teaching of it and then having the light bulb go on for someone.
Even though I have firmly backburnered the Master Hand Knitter program at this point, I think the fact that I have the podcast makes me seek out more learning, more, next thing to learn in knitting. And so I'm not always, I used to love cables. I still love cables, but I was just like doing tons and tons of cable projects and was like, I could never do Fair Isle. Like I tried it once. I didn't get it. I tried it for like 17 and a half seconds. Like it really was just like, why am I doing this? Just go back to cables. You love cables, But then like different challenges came my way or different experiences and things came my way that would have been possible if I could do Fair Isle. And so that pushed me into doing Fair Isle. And then, it's awful, but the lockdowns, got me into, from there I did the the online festival, the online International Fiber Festival. And from there, like that exposed me to so many more heritage crafts I wasn't aware of. Like Estonian knitting comes immediately to mind, which I just wasn't aware was a thing, you know?
Oh.
And so then got to really explore that and love that. And just the sense that humans are just such creative people. And having that reinforced over and over and over again, the more I learn about knitting and wool and fiber crafts, just constantly impressed by the ingenuity and creativity of humans. Like that is my favorite part of doing the actual podcasting itself.
Right. That's cool.
I love it.
Well, what's the worst part, do you think?
I think the mean comments. Well, and not even necessarily the mean. Okay, so like you said, sometimes people are just having a bad day, and I've gotten to that point. Like, and it's very rare. It's very rare that there's a straight up mean comment. I think the thing I have the hardest time with is when people are overly pedantic about things. Mm-hmm. That's when I have a really hard time, because I feel like, okay, I worked really, really hard on this episode and I got something wrong and I apologize, or I got something, a little off or a little not quite right. And I get like rudeness back because of it. Like that's problematic for me. Here's an example of one done right. So I did an episode recently where I talked about my husband and I going to Austria, and how I spoke to someone who is doing a reenactment, and she told me that most people raising sheep in Austria now are hobbyists. Like they just have a few, and no one's really having it processed into wool. And I got a very kind Instagram message from someone, I'm not even sure how long he's been listening, but he's an Austrian listener who works in wool and is like doing a documentary about wool use in Europe. And he was like, hey,
actually,
I know. And he did like just so you know, if you had been in these other areas, you would have seen huge flocks of sheep. They're still being raised. They are mostly being raised for meat in Austria. It is much less the wool. But he pointed me out like different places and different manufacturers that are using wool and people who are still making wool and things like that. And I was like, you know your stuff. He was gracious about it, because I had said I wasn't going looking for wool. Like, this is just what I encountered while I was there. And so he was just like, just so you know, this is other stuff that's going on, and you'd be welcome to come back and like connect with these companies and let's talk more. And so it was nice. It was kind.
It was very constructive.
It was constructive and added to my resources and knowledge.
Right.
As opposed to something that happens very often where I'll get someone who says, well, you shouldn't call it this. I was in a class and this teacher called it that, and you should call it that.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know what to do with that sort of criticism, because it's just, like I said, it's being overly pedantic.
You do nothing with that. Let me just say, from a fellow social media creator, you do nothing, because people that are unhappy can keep scrolling. The internet is a big place. There are lots of us out here. If you don't like what I have to say or how I said it, that's okay. Keep on scrolling, keep on scrolling. Isn't that fun? Oh, that's keep on rolling. Okay, yeah. But you get the gist. People can just keep on going. It's fine. And if I have comments about that, here's my view on that. On YouTube, part of the algorithm is that if people interact with your video and like click the thumbs up or they leave a comment, then that's a good thing. YouTube doesn't care if it's a positive or a negative comment. I care as a human being, but the computer does not. So I look at it like, okay, cool. Thanks for interacting with my channel and making a comment. And then I let it go and I just leave it. And I'm like, keep scrolling. I keep scrolling. I'm like, that's okay. Thanks for watching. Truly, thank you for watching. And I appreciate the interaction, whether it's constructive. Hopefully it's constructive. And that's okay. And some people haven't learned how to be nice, and that's okay. You do have to develop a bit of a thicker skin when it comes to online interactions, because, okay, I'm going to say this and then I'll let it go. I was late to the party and I did not know about Brené Brown, because I live in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, I have the internet, right? So why was I so late to the party? I don't know. She does a TED Talk that I found I got a little teary actually, because I'm a crier. And it was, I forget which TED Talk it was. If I can find the link, and I'll send it to you and you can put it in the show notes. But it was basically about like, we're all these creators and we're out there doing it. And we are down in the trenches doing our thing. And so when people are at an arm's length and they're a distance and they're a keyboard warrior and they think they can just say whatever they want and be snarky or rude or whatever, I mean, that's fine. But you can't give those people credence and take all that seriously, because they are not doing what you're doing. They're not in the trenches. And until they are, until they can say that they're doing what you do and they know what's involved, their opinion means nothing. That's really true. And the speech by Theodore Roosevelt about the man in the arena, if you have not read that or listened to it read, you should, because that's what it's about. It's about, you know, you're the one down in the arena fighting the fight and doing your thing. And the people in the stadium, they're up in the seats, they're like, you know, throwing tomatoes or heckling or doing whatever they're doing. They have no idea what they're talking about because they're not in it. So that's why I feel like if I receive a constructive piece of criticism or feedback from you, I'm going to value that and take that because you're doing it and you know what it takes. But if it's just some random person typing on their computer from God knows where, okay, they're entitled to their opinion. That's fine. But I don't have to give it the gravity that I would a comment from a fellow creator.
Just to be clear, I don't mind having it pointed out when I'm wrong.
Oh, I don't either. But being,
like if I'm straight up wrong, kind. Like let me know. Do let me know, because I can't know everything.
Oh, right.
You know,
right.
And,
we don't.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an opportunity for more content. So like when I was doing that giant cable, I was doing all those Afghan blocks and the Nora's vintage Afghan. Yeah. I made a mistake. I had a miscrossed cable in the middle of the thing.
Oh no.
I didn't even realize it. I did not even realize until it's all done. The video's edited, it's posted. A couple days goes by. I'm reading comments. Somebody's like, I thought you were going to fix that. I thought you were going to show us how to fix it. I kept waiting for that to happen and you didn't. And I was like, what? I was horrified. What? And she says, yeah, it's the third cable down on the left side. And I thought about a third of the way from the bottom. And I looked and I'm like, oh my word. Okay. As embarrassed as I was, that's an opportunity for me to now go back and be like, all right, here's how I'm going to do surgery on this, because if an astute viewer pointed this out and she was kind about it and I was horrified, but it was an opportunity to be like, all right, now here's how I'm going to fix it.
You bring up a good point about like getting back to how things have changed over time.
Yeah.
Because as a podcaster, even just an amateur podcaster, which I kind of consider us to be, even though we do have income from it, I consider us amateur because we're not like serial. We don't have networks backing us and like audio engineers and things like that. You know, like we are the podcast or the video channel. There's definitely imposter syndrome is like always there lurking, and the worry that you have to be right? Because you're an authoritative voice, whether you want to be or not. People look to you as an authoritative voice.
Yeah.
And so when I get something wrong, it really stings.
It does. It really
stings. That's, I think, why it's the delivery of the correction really can make a difference for me, you know, as far as like, hey, you made a mistake. But I've sort of gotten to the point where it's like, well, I'm human. And like, I've sort of left that need to be the correct authoritative figure behind.
Yeah.
And I'm just out here doing the best I can to shine a light on as many people doing awesome things as I can.
Yeah.
And every now and then I'm going to stop and like share some factual information that I've researched, and hopefully I've got it right. You know, I'm picking good sources to draw from and I'm doing my research, but there's going to be someone out there who has a different experience or different research or different whatever, who's going to be like, maybe not.
I think for me, it was an opportunity to show that, you know, this kind of mistake where I miscrossed a cable, it happens, right? It happens to everyone at some point. And so this is an opportunity to learn how to fix your mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And I don't care for the channels that are all like perfect, because that's not real.
To sum up so far,
YouTubing is hard, but
it's more work than you think. It's more work than you think. Doing what we do will take away from the hobby itself. So doing a podcast or a channel or things like that, that will take away the time that you have to do the actual thing that you're talking about. So keep that in mind.
Or knitting what you want to knit instead of for the channel.
Exactly. Knitting what you want to knit versus what makes more sense for content.
And what people,
it will cost you more money than you think for a long time. And then you won't earn as much as you think.
For a long time.
For a long time. And you have to have a really thick skin to keep going, because there are going to be people who are having a bad day.
Yeah. And hopefully you have supportive family as well.
Yeah. You want to have supportive family as you're doing this too. And the definite positives are you find your people no matter where you are in the world. You will find your people, which can be fantastic, especially in such a niche. Like we're in knitting, so we think that so many people are knitters, but we're really a niche. We are a niche topic. It's wonderful to have good feedback when it comes in. That feels really, really good. You put a lot of work into something and people take the time to say, hey, I appreciated that. That was great. Thank you.
And I think the other best part is getting to meet people in person that are your patrons or that you've talked to. Because most of like the events that I do that are in-person events, like patrons always have first priority registration.
Right. Same.
So a lot of the events that I do end up being only patrons, because they sell out and the patrons have purchased that registration for that limited number of seats. So that's really fun though, to be able to meet these people in person that are actually supporting your creativity, supporting the channel and, your endeavors. So that's really cool.
That was like the first 2 weeks of tours that I did were solidly patrons. It was fantastic because I just knew them for so long already. So it was we finally get together. It was wonderful. So getting to meet people, to actually get together with the people that you're getting to know, for sure.
You have the community that you've built, and that's really neat. And you have that, and I do as well. And we actually have some people that overlap between the two, and that's a lot of fun. And
we should do a thing together, Jana. We should do a retreat together with our overlap people.
I would love that. Okay, watch for that coming up.
I know. Now I've said it. That was the dangerous thing to do.
I know, but you have the power of editing.
I'm going to leave it. I don't think I'm going to edit any of this out. We're just going to leave it. Before we go though, Jana, I wanted to have this conversation. I know it was very navel-gazy and very, I don't know. Do I want to say it was selfish? I don't mean it to be selfish. I didn't mean it for it to be selfish. Or I think that more and more people are curious about podcasting and wanting to podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that most podcasters don't carry on. And I think having talked to some of those people who don't, there's like an element of guilt or failure or whatever. I don't think they should feel that way. I think that they didn't have information going into it that helped them plan accordingly.
Right.
Or set their expectations accordingly. So I'm not in any way saying like, now don't do it. No, I'm saying now
Yeah.
you know the elements, that the downsides, the perks. Plan accordingly. Frankly, as you were saying before, I think the more the merrier, especially with something like knitting, where there's elements of it that are becoming endangered.
See, I think it would be totally a blast to have have an episode with another YouTube knitter. I think it'd be super fun, and it would probably go on way long.
This.
But you and I we've had a ton of fun with our daily December vlog. So that's coming up. People can tune into that on the channel. And the Purl Together channel is where that's going to be held. But we talk about everything from midlife issues to what the best cereal is. And we open our yarn and talk about
Oat Bran. Yeah, it's Cracklin' Oat Bran.
I found a really good peanut butter granola lately. I've been loving.
Okay, we got to focus here. These poor people, we held on to them so long. So that's coming up. Jana and I have that coming up for the wool boxes that we have for this year. So that will be on the Purl Together YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe to it now so that you are ready for it. We do those every day, and we talk for a bit, and then there's an interview with someone associated with the box. that we then cut to on most days.
Yes.
And then what else? Do you have anything else coming up you want to share with people, like other plans?
I don't have anything cemented yet, but there will be, of course, we always plan knit-alongs, which is a ton of fun.
Yeah, we need to come up with one for next year, you and I.
I would love to do a retreat with you. I think that would be a blast.
Well, I said knit-along, and you have me up to retreat again.
No, you said that you play it back. When you edit this back, you'll see you said the word retreat.
Well, I said the word retreat before, but you were saying knit-along, and I said knit-along. Anyway, yeah, we'll do both. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And I want to teach more online classes, I think, because some people either don't have the ability to travel or just choose not to, or, we can't be in every place all at once. And some places are just really far. Yeah. When I did the virtual retreat in October, that was over Zoom, and that was a ton of fun. I mean, I had people from New York to California to Australia that attended.
Awesome.
And that was a lot of fun. So look for more online classes from me.
So other than your channel, people know about Purl Together on YouTube. Where else can they follow you?
Anybody can join the public Purl Together Facebook group, and I announce everything there as well. Okay. Patreon.com/Purl Together if you want to become a patron, because patrons get discounts on events and everything. And I'm on Instagram too.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to in a couple weeks, we're going to start doing our blogging, and I look forward to hanging out with you every day, my friend. Thanks for talking to me about all this everything. Stuff.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Jana, for taking the time to sit down and talk with me about being a knitting podcaster. A few more things before we go. Wovember is starting to draw to a close. There is still time to participate, though, and there have been 2 additional prizes added for those who are latecomers to the activity. Hop over to Instagram, find the details on my feed by searching for I Thought I Knew How. The second added prize I have not announced as of the recording, so if you don't see it there, check back in a day or 2, and that should have been announced. You can also check out what people have been posting this month by searching for #LoveWovember. There have been some really great contributions. Speaking of contributions, there is a new blog, lovewovember.com, that has been hosting different contributions from members of the wool community. You can visit lovewovember.com, and by the end of the month, there's going to be 30 entries from 30 different people. Also coming to lovewovember.com is a marketplace full of wool products for your crafts and home and body that will go live on November 28th. So be sure to visit lovewovember.com about a week from today. Many of the vendors are offering coupon codes and gifts with purchase, but those have deadlines associated with them. Remember, it's one thing to talk about wool and how wonderful it is. It's another entirely to actually put your money where your mouth is and make the decision to protect the environment and support wool producers by actually buying wool products. As you're doing your holiday shopping, have a look at Love Wovember and see if you can find something for those you love on your list. One last reminder that the daily blog event with Jana will kick off before the next episode of this podcast, so be sure to hop over to YouTube and subscribe to Purl Together, and then check in each morning of December to see what hijinks we get up to and meet the makers associated with our December yarn boxes. American listeners, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving filled with family and friends and service. I will be back again in 2 weeks as we close out this season of the podcast. In the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow to make a monthly pledge. You may also consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors by visiting the website IThoughtIKnewHow.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. While you are on the site, you can also find the show notes for each episode. Thank you ever so much to my patrons, to Knit New Haven, and to Morehouse Farm for sponsoring the podcast. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on various platforms are all called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.